Senior Director of Marketing at Zeus, which is a communications and collaboration startup based out of Andover, and I'm here to talk about how WebRTC will impact web design. So hands up, first and foremost, who here already kind of has an idea of what WebRTC is all about? All right, kind of, sort of one person in the background, so a blank slate, that's awesome. It's an initiative that Drupal is spearheading. It stands for Web Real-Time Communications, and what it is, it's a new standard, open source by Google, that's going to allow browsers to be the endpoints to communication. So it's going to allow browser-to-browser media communication, so voice, video, and chat, browser-to-browser without downloading any kind of client. So this is going to significantly impact what you can do with the website in terms of communications enabling it. Basically, it's going to allow developers to add real-time voice calls, video chats, and file sharing to web apps without the need for any kind of plugins at all. It's going to eliminate the plugins. It's completely cool. It's really, really, yes. Gentlemen in the audience said, this is so cool. Yes, exactly. You think so. It's very, very cool. It's essentially just a JavaScript-based API. And it's going to enable a lot of really, really cool things in the immediate future, not just for web apps, but for sites themselves, especially any enterprise site that depends on communications with the end user. Phil Edholm, whom I know, who is an analyst who covers the communications industry, basically says WebRTC and HTML5 could enable the same transformation for real time that the original browser did for information. That's significant. So what's the vision for what WebRTC is? Well, basically it's a soft phone in your browser. It's your phone, your desk phone, your office phone is going to eventually go away because it can all be browser-based. And then, of course, you're still going to always be updating your software. And it means that real-time communication can be everywhere. It's obviously a significant threat to the $2 trillion telecommunications industry because it's going to make phones go away even faster and be replaced by software. And if you want to envision what the user experience is like, it's just like Skype, only way, way, way better and based on open standards. So it's already getting a lot of support out there. This is basically, and I can share this is going to be posted to the D4D website as well as to our own slide share. So if you don't feel like you have to absorb the whole thing, this is the browser support for it. Obviously, Chrome completely supports it. Firefox completely supports it, and it's moving into mobile browser support as well. Internet Explorer is supporting it now via a Chrome Frame plugin, but Microsoft really is going on a proprietary path with WebRTC. They're not really supporting it, so it's not working terribly well in Internet Explorer without that. It works in Opera. It works a little less in Safari, but it's getting there. You need a third-party plugin. So in terms of browser support, it's growing and it's growing every day. So here's how WebRTC works on a technical standpoint. The media just moves down from browser to browser when you call it, whether it's video, whether it's files, whether it's voice. It's just moving from browser to browser. You still, however, need a backend to support it if you're going to do this on an enterprise scale. So you need to have an XMPP or SIP server to support any kind of significant use of WebRTC on an enterprise website because the web server is not going to be able to support it. You need to take whatever's happening in the browser on the WebRTC level and say you're using it for customer service within an organization. They've decided that they want to use WebRTC for customer service, say they're a major consumer brand. You're going to need to find a way to tie what's happening WebRTC-wise back into whatever software-based phone infrastructure is within the organization and make it work. And you had better hope they have a software-based phone infrastructure, which more and more organizations are moving towards. We know because we provide that kind of software. So you do need to have server support for any significant use of real-time communications. You need to have the right kind. Like I said, you need to have a SIP or XMPP server, not just a regular server like whatever else you have running on your web infrastructure. However, once you do have that set up, it's, like you said, some really cool things can start to happen. But you do need to think about how you are going to implement WebRTC in the enterprise so that it doesn't, not only doesn't break anything, but provides a really good user experience. Again, this is going to be posted. This is a really, really elaborate slide on different codecs that are available. Whenever you do real-time communications, you do need a variety of codecs. You need video codecs. You need a voice codec. Opus is an open source one. There's a couple of different video codecs that you can use. The good thing is that it's now being handled within the browser, so that it really simplifies things. It reduces the complexity needed to handle real-time communications. So what does this then look like when you get to the level of the web app and the website, the enterprise website? What does communications enabling web apps and sites start to look like? Well, here's a couple of things that we're working on that can give you some ideas. One is communications enabling email applications, such as Outlook, which is not a web app, or web-based Zimbra. It means that, has anyone ever been on one of those interminable email chains where everybody's CCing everybody else saying thank you, and there's like 70 people on the email chain?
Never.
No, exactly. Those things never happen. Well, if you have your web application, your email application, real-time communications enabled, you can stop the madness immediately. You don't have to invite them into a Skype call. You can hit a button. And we've done this for Outlook and for Zimbra. You can hit a button. It's integrated with your address book, and you can call only the key people involved in that communications. Get them into a conference call, do file sharing with them, get a video call if you need to, and immediately integrate a real-time communications experience with your email. You can also do that with your CRM system as well, so that you can be calling from within Salesforce. You can be calling your customers from within Salesforce and automatically log every communication that you have with them. And it's not just voice and video, but like I said, it's screen sharing right in the app, which can be tremendously helpful and cut down on those interminable email chains significantly. So communications enablement, we really think, is probably going to eventually become the standard for a web app because it makes things so much easier. You don't have to toggle between Skype or Google Hangouts or actually holding, your phone or your cell phone and communicating with people. You can be in an application, communicating with them and collaborating with them from within the application rather than having it be another service that you have to manage. So you really need to think about, if you build web applications, how are you going to develop for this now? How are you going to add real-time communications into those web apps in ways that enhance the user experience? This is an example that we're doing, talking a little bit more about the Zimbra integration. You can initiate calls now from within your email. You can see presence. You can, same way you do in Gmail, you can see people's presence and you can know whether they're available to call. You also have unified messaging, so you can check your voicemail from within the email account. And you can do conferencing. Like I said before, you can basically conference call people out of your email account. And they don't even have to have started in on one of those interminable email chains in order for you to do this. You could literally get in the morning, start to fire off an email, think, you know what, this is better as a phone call, hit a button, and from within the email client, call everybody on a soft phone. You don't even need to pick up the phone anymore. And you call all of them and you can voice and video chat with them and file share with them. Right there. Our second version, it's going to be both voice and video in the browser with screen sharing and group chat. So if you are the kind of person who likes to IM people rather than call, you can also be IMing them at the same time. And so web apps like this kind of thing is going to become more common. We feel like the user experience, once it gets there, once people get used to kind of being able to call people from within their email, from within their CMS, from within their CRM, and collaborate from within it, they're going to begin to expect it, and it's certain, or at least find it to be a very, very nice add-on. There's some other really cool experiments out there to kind of branch out from what we're doing. Fresh Tilled Soil has created a video chat widget for websites that you can go ahead and grab and play with. It's really interesting. And Twellophone is, you can use your Twitter handle as your phone number. Currently, it only works in the browser. But literally, you can now call people's Twitter handles and talk to them, which is extremely cool. And the customer service implications for that for an enterprise website are tremendous, because imagine you have an angry customer who's like tweeting up a storm, I am sick and tired of the service I've gotten on this airline or whatever, and imagine if you were able to then have somebody with some seniority or some responsibility for dealing with the situation call their Twitter handle and talk to them. So that, I think, is one of the coolest things that's really being experimented with. And you can go ahead and try Twellophone for yourself, set up an account. It takes like 10 seconds, and you can be calling people for Twitter handle. Twitter handle, you don't need Skype. You don't need to, like I said, download a client. That's the real excitement around WebRTC.
Where do we go to set that up?
Twellophone.
Twellophone?
Just go to Twellophone. And if you want to play with what we're doing with Zimmer, just contact me, and I can help you play around with that as well. Banana Bread, it's a game. There's a lot of really cool gaming stuff also going on with WebRTC. It's peer-to-peer multiplayer WebRTC game. It's very cool. And for a very nice old school game, there is Cube Slam, where you can play face-to-face, a very vintage-looking video game. You can play against your friends or against a polar bear. I prefer to play with the polar bear. So moving on from web apps to what websites can do, WebRTC, I think, is going to fundamentally change what a website can do. We've already moved the website so far away from brochureware with community and with social media that it's not even funny. But now with WebRTC, I think the website's going to completely change what it is. It's going to go from being your website to being the entire hub of how you're going to communicate with the outside world as an enterprise, or as a university, or whatever you're doing. It's going to be how you call people. You're going to collaborate within and outside your organization from there on whatever channel. There's not going to be the need to invite people into GoToMeeting anymore. There is not going to be necessarily, although it's going to be obviously far in the future, you know, your little 800 number on your website, and please pick up the phone and call. No, you're going to pick up the website and call. Scores of touch points within your website are now going to be touch points WebRTC enabled with the outside world for real-time communications. Think about, just for a second, on a large site, all throughout the site, where it would be very, very cool to have the option for voice chat to be enabled within the site, or for video chat, or file sharing, right there within the site. For a university, imagine if you could integrate file sharing, voice and video on the admission site, part of the site. Think about how that would transform the application process. So you really have to start thinking, as WebRTC begins to emerge, how are you going to rebuild sites with these functionality? I mean, it's really, you know, you see now a lot of sites have click to chat or click to call, but they're kind of in their infancy. This is going to make it so much simpler. It's really going to be living in the browser. There isn't going to be a need for a client, and it's going to become more and more normal for what people are doing. I mean, social media has already begun to make sites more interactive, but there's still, let's face it, a lot of sites out there that are basically brochureware. With WebRTC, you're going to have to think even more long and hard about how are you going to integrate it into the site. It's going to accelerate the evolution from site to app. You already see a lot of sites that are more or less an app, and a lot of apps that are more or less a site. It's going to continue that movement away from, oh, we just have a site, to we have a site that does stuff. We have a site that is an app. And as soon as it becomes more and more broadly accepted, it's going to stop being just something that's cool to being something you need to think about. It's going to be an essential part of any serious consumer-facing website, because people are going to come to expect it. So what I have found to be useful from a design perspective to step back and look at is to step away from the idea of, oh my gosh, we have literally thousands of places on our site where it would be very, very cool to integrate WebRTC, to starting to think about where are the few parts in the site where it would make sense to start. And the reason why I can't emphasize that enough is, again, although on a small scale, you just go to telephone and you can call people's Twitter handles, when you start to do this for a site where it will make sense, because this won't necessarily make sense on small sites, this will be more larger enterprise or university-wide sites, it requires significant back-end to support. It requires significant back-end to integrate it with the rest of your IT infrastructure. It requires significant back-end to make it work with, like I said, phone systems, make sure that it doesn't crash, make sure it doesn't break things. So, like I said, you are going to have to change what kind of servers you're running stuff off of. You really do need some things to you do need to familiarize yourself with SIP if you do work on the back end, and if not, you need to work with someone who does. So it is, at the end of the day, a cool thing to play with on a small scale, but if you start doing it on a large scale, you're going to need to design it and architect it in a way that works. You're also going to have to think about organizationally, how is it going to be sustainable within the organization to have all of this real-time communication, so you're flooding within. So you're going to need to not only have a contact center solution in place that's going to be able to handle WebRTC originating customer service calls, but you're going to need to train people to field technical service or customer service calls that are coming in from people who are just on the website right now versus people who are experiencing it in a different way right now, who are going out of their way to call. It's going to be a lot simpler, and people are going to expect a much more media-rich experience. So there's also a human capital training aspect you need. So you need to break it down into different areas where it doesn't make sense to put it there. E-commerce is obviously logical, but you have to be careful not to go to town and push people to say video chat about minor products. I mean, you know, if you are selling 40,000 different pairs of sandals, do you really want to encourage people to video chat about them? Think about what that's going to cost. So think about how are you going to integrate it with e-commerce. For education, I think it makes a lot more sense, especially for e-learning. I think it can create tremendously rich e-learning experiences to add video. Even now, even going outside of WebRTC, one of our customers, Lafayette College, is using mobile video to workshop student papers in a creative writing class. So right now, instead of the workshop being something that happens in a classroom like this, people are workshopping things remotely via video chat. So in an educational context and for educational implementations, there's a lot of really creative things you can do that you'll need to talk to faculty about to get ideas of pedagogically how they want to do that. And then obviously with applications like Telephone, social media becomes a lot more exciting and also a lot noisier. So again, if you have a very social site that has community on it, for instance, think about how video could enhance the community experience, how voice could enhance the community experience. And again, you want to make sure to implement it in ways that not only work, but that work in ways that are sustainable. So think about, why do you want to add WebRTC? Do you want to do, there should be a reason to add WebRTC. It's very cool as an experiment, but if you're going to implement it site-wide on an enterprise site, sit down with the client, or if you're internal, with yourselves, and think about, where is it going to help people to be able to video chat with somebody internally? I mentioned earlier that it might be very useful in the application process to be able to talk to an admissions officer via video, or with a finance person. Think about how it's going to enhance the user experience. Don't just add it because it's cool. Think about, where is the user experience actually going to be made better by live, real-time, multimedia communications? Where is it going to be helpful to talk to somebody on the phone? And then think about different aspects of real-time communication that will work on different parts of the site. Where will video work best? Do you want to use video for lead generation, or is chat in for lead gen sites? Is customer support done best by video or by voice? In the community, do you want to have video everywhere, somewhere, a lot of places? Who's going to police that? Think about ways to add that to the site that make sense organically to the user experience, and add in the functionality where it's going to have a significant impact. Start asking questions at the start of any project that has WebRTC in it, really, really early, because you need to design a WebRTC implementation very thoughtfully. First and foremost, you need to find out where it makes sense to add it. Ask the client. They may have a long list of places where they think they would like WebRTC, but ask where it makes sense to start. Start small. Don't throw WebRTC all over a site or all over an application. Figure out where it's going to make the most sense, because it's very tempting to be a kid in a candy store. And if too many different functions are now connected via WebRTC to the outside world, it can become very difficult to manage. So if now sales has the option to video chat with people, customer service, tech support, everybody's video chatting all the time, this can become overwhelming. So think about which functions are going to be most able to absorb the different workflows that are going to come in via WebRTC and implement it there. Maybe the technical staff, the tech support staff, are the people best equipped to deal with people video chatting with them, or the ones who are going to need to. And then you need to step back and figure out if the organization's ready to use their website in this way. Collaboration is fantastic. It really increases productivity, but you need to figure out that for the specific use that people want to put WebRTC for, are they actually ready for this? It always does need to tie into the phone system. They need to know that that is essential. So find out, are they organizationally ready? Are they set up for SIP? Are they set up to connect things the right way? Is their IT infrastructure real-time communication? Then figure out which functions are ready to communicate with people in this way. Because we've seen with social media that a lot of people decide that they're going to go into social media. We're going to be on Twitter all the time. We're going to interact with our customers via Twitter. And then you find that people are actually not really ready to handle the volume of what actually happens on Twitter every day. They're not ready to deal with customers tweeting at them. So are they ready to deal with customers telephoning at them? You have to really figure out, are people able to handle it, and then get a sense organizationally of who's going to be responsible for the inbound communications that are going to result. Is this tying into tech support, customer support, sales? Who's responsible for that function, and is that team now being trained to work with WebRTC? Don't kick off a project until you have that nailed down of what happens, because WebRTC is a very cool technology, but at the end of the day, it's a very human technology. It's connecting one human via the other, via the browser, and you have to make sure that human A is going to deal with the right human B on the other side, and that the people on that side are prepared for it. So it's less of a infrastructure question at that point than it is an organizational question. So at the end of the day, make sure the pieces are in place and that the backend will support it. And also try to find out, in addition to WebRTC, how is that going to connect to your social media as well? Because there's going to be more and more things out there like telephone. There's going to be more and more things out there like what we're doing. So you're going to figure out who's responsible for all of these different kinds of communications. So what's next for WebRTC? When is all of this really going to happen? When are kids applying to college going to be able to call the Twitter handle of the admissions officer and talk to them? I think consumer adoption is going to lead the way and push the envelope, like we're seeing with the gamification, and some of these really interesting WebRTC games, and that's going to start to drive enterprise demand. I think the applications to customer service and social media are going to be the greatest. I think the tech support falls under that sort of thing as well. I think when you really need to get people communicating in real time with someone in a way that's richer than just a phone conversation, that's where you're going to see these kinds of things cropping up the most. And I think the people who are going to be implementing it the most are consumer sites with a really intense service focus. So you can definitely see this being companies that have to engage in a lot of customer service are going to see it happening earlier than most people. And organizations are going to have to deal with this new way of communicating by knowing when and how to apply it to be effective. So I thought I would just give you this kind of brief overview on what WebRTC is and then open it up to questions, because like I said, it is kind of new, and I think we're all at different places where we are with our knowledge of it and what we want to know.
You mentioned the backend's fairly complex to set up. Are there any SaaS providers out there that you can plug into and get a click to chat that are leveraging WebRTC yet?
Not too many. I would say, I mean, I can, if they were your competitors.
Are you guys offering that, or is that what you're trying to?
We're not, no, we're not SaaS. We are, what we offer is we offer the software for the back end, not as SaaS, but as on-prem. You can have it hosted in the cloud by the cloud provider.
So the first thing I think of is this Salesforce App Exchange plugin that's SaaS, and
Yeah.
everyone has Salesforce is
We
going
have
to
that,
want this
yeah.
yesterday.
Exactly. No, we're working on something like that. And we do have an open source version that you can use, so that's free. I'm not trying to sell you anything, called Civic CCS. So it's still so much as an emerging technology that I think the vendors are going to start to accumulate as this grows in demand. Yes?
How difficult is it to set up on the back end? If you're an organization that, has a web guy that's been, running the server stacks for, I don't know, for the last 20 years, and he's an Apache,
Yeah.
Linux kind of guy, what's the learning curve with something like this?
Well,
Perhaps the cost curve?
the cost curve, well, like I said, we also have an open source project, and it's perfect it runs in Linux very well. The learning curve, I mean, I've seen people basically spin something up in 6 hours. I think getting to kind of understand how SIP works might take you a little while, but it's not a huge investment of time. I just think if you're web focused, you do need to pay attention to it and learn it. But I mean, you can actually go to sipfoundry.org and play around with Civic CCS and find out more. I mean, like I said, it's an open source project and it's free. It just makes the commercial version, but you can definitely learn enough about how to run a SIP server that you could probably get up to speed pretty quickly. The reason I keep emphasizing it's tough though is that if you were to not put together the right backend, then you'd be in trouble once people started like calling in and video chatting in. Then you'd have some issues. Yes?
Is there, you say it's very new and it's emerging, is there anybody now who's experimenting with it, like customer service? Because I think of, like you said, about customer service with like electronics or hardware.
Exactly.
So that's the first thing, usually when I would do a chat if I had a problem with my previous laptop or something like that. And I could see something certainly for sales or education, as you mentioned, but is there anybody who
I
is
don't,
kind of playing with it, or
just doing it on an
or
organization.
somebody who's looking for people to, like, what do you call it, user testing?
Beta testing, yes.
To see if things work.
Well, hey, you want, talk to me afterwards once you have something you can beta test for us. Not too many people are using it on a large scale because the standard itself hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay.
It's still very emerging and there's still a certain amount of uncertainty. I would say probably it's going to be later on this year or probably early next year before there's been agreement on the standard. So because the standard is still being developed,
Yeah.
I would say if you're really excited about WebRTC, go to webrtc.org and take part in the development of the standard. Would be probably one of the ways to do it. Like I said, there are some really cool experiments going on with fresh tilt soil and telephone. So that if you want to play around with something that's publicly available that's WebRTC and just get familiar with it, those are some really good places to go. And like the banana bread games.
How far out are we, do you think, before it becomes mainstream?
I would say that right now within the telecommunications industry, people are very much talking about it, but are trying to figure out basically what to do with it, because it's hard to commercialize something that's still emerging as a standard. So it's very hard. Companies like ours and Fresh Tilt Soil who are doing things with it it's because there's a need that we're seeing. But I think the standard, like I said, it's getting closer and closer to being released as an HTML5 standard very soon. It's pretty, a lot of really stable things are out there. I would say we're probably a year and a half out from seeing anything really significant. But I think it's one of those things where once people start using it, it will have a snowballing effect, like Twitter itself. It's like, do you remember when you had some weird friends who were doing this thing called Twitter, and then now you're addicted to it. So I think it's one of those things where we're like about a year and a half out from seeing more clarity in where the standard's going. And, not to say much, but Microsoft has been trying to muddy the waters by throwing in their own standard that's different and tending towards proprietary, and it didn't work, but it kind of created a lot of controversy in the development of the standard that has, muddied it a little bit. But I think we're past that point. Yes?
I was thinking another use for it is, if you might or might not be adopted. When you think about like encrypted conversations, like somebody who wants to talk about a doctor after they had surgery or after something, where you don't have to come into the office, but you want to have more.
Exactly, like telemedicine.
Yes.
Exactly. And there was an architecture diagram in here that I can share with people. It's pretty easy to add encryption, so you can make these kinds of communications secure. And that's a really good use of it as well, especially for people who are in isolated areas. And, it's going to be very hard for them to even get to a site where they can be involved in secure telemedicine. Who wants to Skype about a serious medical problem? You don't have any sense that it's necessarily going to be all that secure.
Skype is owned by Microsoft, right?
Yeah. But even if they weren't, I would just not use a public service of any kind necessarily to, do something that you need to keep secure. So I wouldn't Google Hangout about a medical problem necessarily.
I missed it at the beginning, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at the WebRTC page. It says it's available on Chrome and will be available on Firefox. So did you mention that?
Actually, so if you read some more of the industry literature about browser support, I'll get back to the browser support page. There's actually pretty much full support for the desktop version on Firefox now. And it's been announced that there's going to be Android browser support very soon. Yes. So yeah, it's actually, this is the full story on browser support as of last
You
month.
mentioned it, sorry, I missed the beginning.
And you can get the slides afterwards.
Is there any reason that iOS is not supported?
I think that at the moment Apple is, currently kind of focused on FaceTime. So I think that's probably why.
But a lot of medical apps are based on iPad.
Exactly.
That's the challenge.
Exactly. So I think it's going to get there. It's definitely going to get there. I think as people get more and more used to using WebRTC, it's going to be impossible to ignore. Any more questions?
From a social site / gamers type site, which I have in mind, once people would identify themselves as being part of a team / group / guild / alliance,
Yes.
does it have the capacity of creating a group? Basically, somebody join into the group and then literally just have a button on their home page that every time they click the button, they would automatically be joined into a group voice chat?
Absolutely, it's whatever you build. This is HTML5. It's not, it's not anything particularly unique or different outside of regular HTML5. So that's what makes it so extremely cool, is that because it's HTML5, you can build whatever you want very easily, like in a matter of hours.
Because currently the alternative is if somebody wants to do that, and they go on to a gamer's realm, so to speak, they have to subscribe to either Skype or to Raid Call or TeamSpeak or something like that, trying to have voice chat happening while they're playing their game.
Exactly. That's exactly part of the reason why WebRTC is so cool, and why I think it's also going to be very popular in the gaming community, is you have to right now subscribe to some kind of service or download some kind of a plugin or download some kind of application to be able to do this kind of chat, and this is just going to live in the browser. And while living in the browser, you can configure it any way you want. You can write whatever kind of web app around it you want. It's HTML5, so it's great. Any more questions? Okay. Well, like I said, the slide deck is going to be available on the D4D website, as well as I'm going to post some resources, including a link to SIP Foundry so you can play around with SIP XCCS, which again, it's an open source project for you to download, as well as the WebRTC.org site, where I think if you want to be involved in the development of the standard, I think now's a really good time to at least sort of be involved in those conversations or look at what other people are talking about. And also some of the other experiments you can take part in, such as 12-phone and banana bread, which I think you're going to be enjoy. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, the slides are going to be on the D4D website.